Hi there, welcome to the Boileau Family Law Group YouTube channel. My name is Trevor, and this is Pierre Boileau. He is one of the partners in the Boileau Family Law Group, and today we're going to be talking about Family Lawyers Edmonton Cohabitation Agreements. Again, that topic is Family Lawyers Edmonton Cohabitation Agreements. Here's a quick statistic from Stats Canada. The share of men in their late 20s who are never married increased from 32% in 1981 to 78.8% in 2011. And for women in the same age group, the corresponding increase was from 20% to 67.4%. So Pierre, that is a huge change in numbers from 81 to 2011.
Big change.
And I'm sure that being in family law and helping people with these things, you've seen the increase in it. Maybe you could tell us a little bit about your experience with cohabitation agreements and what's been happening there.
So certainly because people are choosing to either marry at a later date, gives rise to a couple of issues, one of which is because they're choosing to marry at a later date, they are still entering into longer term relationships, but not formalizing that relationship by way of marriage. Still important though for those people because they are acquiring assets, debts, for those individuals to give thought to a cohabitation agreement during that period of time that they are residing with their partner but are not married.
Okay, so the biggest question that I have right now, the first one is specifically, what is a cohabitation agreement?
So a cohabitation agreement is a contract between parties that sets out their particular rights and interests that may arise in the event of the relationship breakdown. So it's very specific. Oftentimes there's a fair bit of negotiation between the parties. They just want some certainty that some particular assets or all other assets are going to be protected in the event that their relationship does not subsist.
Okay. Now, maybe you can answer this question for us. How does the government define cohabitation or common law couples? So
that's tricky because there are some definitions that come from the federal perspective, so that apply across the board, across Canada, whereas other definitions are specific to the province or territory where the parties reside. Here in Alberta, technically a common law couple is defined as a couple that have lived together for 3 consecutive years. Okay. There are exceptions to that, but that really is your starting point. That's your general rule.
Okay. Now, what are some differences between cohabitation agreements and prenuptial agreements?
The most obvious of which is in a cohabitation agreement, the parties are not legally married one to the other, and there is no intention, at least foreseeable intention, that they're going to be married to one another anytime soon. Obviously, a prenup or what's called a postnuptial agreement, a contract that's entered into after the parties have been legally married, that really is the differentiation. Many of the same issues arise. Whether it's a cohabitation agreement or a prenuptial agreement, it really is, are we talking about whether it's going to be captured by the parties getting married or not?
Okay. So Pierre, tell me, what are the differences between divorce of a married couple and separation of cohabiting couples? What is the big difference there?
There is a big difference right now. So as it relates to the divorce of a married couple, there is one more specific piece of legislation in Alberta called the Matrimonial Property Act, and it only speaks to the separation of assets and debts for a married couple. Currently, it does not deal with the division of assets and debts if the parties are living together and not married. There are going to be changes to that legislation that will be implemented in January of 2020 that will more specifically capture, if you will, those unmarried parties. They will then now fall under the legislation, and that legislation will then apply to married and non-married cohabiting parties.
Okay. My next question that I have is, why is it important for someone to have a cohabitation agreement?
People choose a lot of different reasons to have cohabitation agreements. In some instances, as an example, it might be a family-owned business, and it is more the parents perhaps who are insisting that their kids enter into a cohabitation agreement with their partner so as to protect that particular asset, that family-owned business. Other people choose to enter into a cohabitation agreement because they want to specifically crystallize values as at a specific date. They may be quite willing to share in the further acquisition of wealth on a go-forward basis, but as at that time, it's really important for them to come to an agreement as to the value that they are each bringing into that relationship. There's a number of other reasons why. Best to have a sit down with someone and go through some of what those reasons might be.
Okay. Now, can cohabiting couples get an agreement in place at any time, or is there a point at which it's too late?
No, it's never too late. Certainly my advice to parties would be sooner is better. Oftentimes one of the parties and or both of the parties may find themselves less motivated to deal with those particular terms that would go into that contract once they have already been living together. So I would certainly urge people to give it serious consideration if they are thinking of moving in together. Look at your particular facts and circumstances and think about a cohabitation agreement before you actually take that big step and move in together.
Okay. Now, what is the process for getting a cohabitation agreement prepared?
Different processes. In some instances, one of the two parties will come in, have a consultation with me. They have had an in-depth discussion with their partner, so they have a very good sense in terms of what may be important for both sides. And so I will try and temper my discussion, to take that into account. The contract, my draft agreement, will also be somewhat tempered in that I'm trying to create a contract that is certainly more of a win-win and or very clear from both perspectives. I have had occasion to meet with both sides, so both couples, and I ask some very generic questions. What's important for them? What is their intention by giving thought to the creation of a cohabitation agreement? What do they want to address in that cohabitation agreement? So really get them thinking in terms of why this document, why this contract is going to be important for them, and really what are they wanting to do with it.
Excellent. The last question that I have for you is, how does someone get started with you, Pierre, or anyone at Boileau Family Law Group?
Specific as it relates to an agreement, best to give the office a call. I set up a consultation. As I say, meet with one or both of the parties and get as much information as I possibly can, and sit down with them, answer any questions they may have about the process, the timing, the cost, so that they leave that meeting fully informed, and I have a much better sense in terms of what it is that they want, what's important to them, and that contract will specifically set out those specifics.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Pierre. And if you guys have enjoyed this, you've got some great information out of it. That's fantastic. And I need you to go to Boileau Family Law Group, give them a phone call, schedule a consultation with Pierre or one of the other lawyers there, and they'll be glad to answer your questions and set up that initial consultation. That's all for me, and we'll see you guys next time.